Jaiya opens the podcast by reframing sexuality not as something shameful or wrong, but as a vital expression of sovereignty and divinity. She highlights how historical suppression of sex has fostered human shame and distorted natural expressions of pleasure, which in turn has contributed to seeing humanity itself as flawed or bad. By reclaiming sexuality as divine and sacred, she proposes a transformational shift in consciousness, where sexual pleasure becomes not only a source of joy, but also a potent gateway to awakening. This sacred view dissolves the duality between the profane and the sacred, inviting individuals to see the divine in all aspects of life, and especially within their own erotic nature. Importantly, Jaiya connects sexuality to empowerment, observing that sexual energy, when embraced, amplifies personal sovereignty. This sovereignty counteracts societal norms that seek to keep individuals disempowered by severing their connection to sexual pleasure. Through a spiritual and power-based lens, Jaiya positions sexuality as central to reclaiming our full potential as embodied divine beings, encouraging us to remember ourselves through love and pleasure rather than repression and shame. The conversation deepens with Jaiya's assertion that sexuality is often the last area individuals dare to explore deeply on their journey to self-realization. Many experience blocks or clenched buttholes around the topic as a result of cultural conditioning, making it a hidden but powerful frontier where unconscious patterns reside. Jaiya suggests that this resistance arises because sexuality holds enormous power to expose vulnerabilities and simultaneously to invite profound healing and awakening. The very energy that fuels sex also animates life itself, and thus working consciously with sexual energy becomes a radical act of growing into wholeness. She points out that many spiritual seekers or health-conscious individuals focus on external improvements, business success, fitness, relationships, yet hesitate to face the intensity of erotic energy. Yet, those who cultivate a clear and centered relationship with their sexuality often embody a deeper integration of mind, body, and spirit. Jaiya's perspective invites a dismantling of the taboo, encouraging a conscious reckoning with sexual energy as a potent resource for spiritual maturity. A major theme Jaiya explores is the relationship between suppression and distortion of sexual energy. When sexual expression is repressed or shamed, the natural flow of this life force energy becomes twisted or sideways. Without healthy outlets or conscious practices to work with sexual energy, individuals experience inner conflict or energetic blockages manifesting as unconscious sexual behavior or emotional suffering. Jaiya likens sexual energy to aliveness itself and stresses that suppressed energy does not dissipate. Rather, it finds unhealthy forms of expression. Transmutation, a central tantric principle, is introduced as a conscious technique of transforming sexual energy into love, creativity, or spiritual illumination. Jaiya emphasizes that this ability to transmute is foundational to human experience, the capacity to turn darkness into light, shadow into awakening. This process is often hindered when psychosexual development is stunted or incomplete. She points out that many adults remain arrested in immature erotic patterns because society fails to provide expansive education or encouragement for continued sexual evolution. Jaiya beautifully uses the metaphor of a symphony to describe the multifaceted nature of sexual experience. She observes that many people repeatedly play the one note of sex, typically a pattern of behaviors that brings familiar but limited pleasure. This repetition can hardwire narrow neural pathways, a process known as neuroplasticity. Parallel to this is the concept of metaplasticity, or the plasticity of plasticity, which creates fertile ground for expansive rewiring. Orgasm becomes a critical gateway into metaplasticity, offering an expanded state of consciousness where new pleasure patterns can be cultivated. The podcast deeply explores the idea that boredom, addiction, e.g., pornography, and sexual dysfunction may stem from this repetitive one-note approach. By cultivating more varied and creative somatic habits in sexual practice, individuals invite their nervous systems to explore richer, more nuanced states of pleasure and connection. This shift from a rut to a full symphonic expression of sexuality offers a pathway to not only greater intimacy, but also increased neural vitality and awakening. An honest and critical examination is given to the cultural landscape marked by pornography's ubiquity and its addictive qualities. Jaiya notes that porn consumption can hijack the dopamine reward system, creating rigid neural grooves that interfere with genuine connection and pleasure with partners. This over-sexualized lens distorts how individuals perceive others, reducing people to objects for gratification rather than whole beings worthy of sacred connection. The result is emotional disconnection, diminished sexual satisfaction, and an internalized sense of shame or alienation. She also addresses the concept of desexualizing the mind, which some advocate as a solution to porn addiction. Jaiya underscores that shifting the lens through which people view others, from objectification back to sacred recognition, is essential for healing and rewiring erotic perception. This requires cultivating presence, empathy, and somatic awareness, fostering more attuned, mutual, and conscious sexual engagement. The rich history and transformative potential of Tantra are woven throughout the conversation. Jaiya provides a nuanced overview of Tantra's origins, emphasizing its foundational principle that enlightenment need not require renouncing the world or celibacy. Unlike ascetic traditions that reserved spiritual realization for monks or hermits, Tantra emerged as a path explicitly designed for householders, those living ordinary lives amidst family, work, and social responsibilities. This makes it a harder but more accessible and integrated route to awakening. Jaiya shares a powerful vision of holding space between the domains of monastic renunciation and embodied pleasure, recognizing that the path may dissolve these boundaries altogether into pure suchness. She highlights tantric philosophy's radical embrace of pleasure and embodiment, where orgasmic energy itself becomes a vehicle to enter expanded states of consciousness. This inclusivity affirms the divine feminine and challenges patriarchal structures that historically marginalized women's spiritual potential. The idea of self-pleasure is reframed as a profound spiritual practice rather than a secret or shameful act. Jaiya encourages listeners to approach self-pleasure mindfully, beginning with breath awareness and cultivating a radical acceptance of sensation. Through this framework, even difficult or unwanted bodily sensations can be transmuted into pleasurable experiences, shifting long-held patterns of resistance into energetic flow. She invites the listener to dissolve dualistic judgments, good, bad, right, wrong, to access the pure energetic frequency beneath the surface experiences. This conscious self-pleasure becomes a modality for deepening the observer or witness awareness, eventually transcending subject-object duality to experience oneness. Jaiya beautifully articulates how this practice not only increases somatic sensitivity, but also fuels neuroplasticity, opening fertile ground for new states of awakening. She advocates dedicating time to erotic practices as intentionally as one might approach meditation, thereby harnessing erotic energy as a pathway to embodying presence and expanded consciousness. Exploring anatomy through both physical and energetic lenses, Jaiya elucidates the distinct yet complementary sexual physiology of men and women. She explains that, while men's sexual energy often moves outward during orgasm and ejaculation, women's sexual energy typically flows upward through the body. This divergence extends to different nervous system control centers and nervous pathways for orgasm and ejaculation phenomena. Distinguishing orgasm from ejaculation, Jaiya introduces the possibility of men cultivating multi-orgasmic experiences without ejaculation and extending their capacity for pleasure through transmutation and breathwork. She underscores that these potentials are underexplored culturally but accessible with restorative practice. For women, she highlights the complexity of orgasmic types, clitoral, vaginal, ejaculatory, and transcendent, and notes how greater sensory capacity and pleasure are tied into biology's design for reproduction. She challenges myths and educates on the rich spectrum of possibilities available within all bodies, emphasizing adaptability and empowerment. One of the podcast's richest contributions is Jaiya's introduction of the Erotic Blueprint model, which she developed from decades of clinical observation. This framework identifies 5 primary archetypes of erotic expression: energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter. Each blueprint describes distinctive patterns of turn-ons, arousal pathways, and relational dynamics. For instance, energetics respond deeply to anticipation and subtle touch, while sensuals crave rich sensory immersion and romantic context. Sexuals embody the culturally dominant narrative of straightforward physical pleasure, and kinkies thrive on taboo and creative exploration of boundaries. Shapeshifters possess full range and fluidity across all blueprints. Jaiya emphasizes that understanding these blueprints offers language and permission for diverse erotic expression without judgment, fostering better communication and intimacy. She notes that many individuals blend archetypes, and ideally, people grow into shapeshifters who integrate broad dimensions of their erotic nature. Importantly, the model challenges gender stereotypes, revealing that men and women demonstrate a more even distribution among the blueprints than cultural myths suggest. The podcast delves into the challenges couples face in sustaining sexual vitality over time, offering compassionate insight and practical advice. Jaiya stresses the importance of releasing judgments or problematizing fluctuations in desire, acknowledging that sexuality naturally ebbs and flows throughout life due to biochemistry, physical health, emotional states, or energetic balance. Keeping an open and curious dialogue fosters connection rather than blame. A creative concept named the passion trifecta is introduced, which invites couples to consciously introduce novel elements such as playful obstacles, mystery, or naughtiness to rekindle attraction and erotic energy. Jaiya also highlights the role of honoring bodily pleasure, emotional attunement, and mutual exploration as keys to breaking out of routine patterns. By framing sexual connection as a dynamic, evolving dance rather than a set of goals or expectations, partners can reignite intimacy and discover new levels of shared ecstasy. The concluding reflections bring attention to the relationship between sexual ecstasy and spiritual awakening, emphasizing integration as the gateway to lasting wisdom. Jaiya distinguishes between mystical experiences, the ecstatic, transcendental moments often triggered in sexual encounters, and awakening, the ongoing process of consciousness recognizing its true nature beyond egoic boundaries. She stresses that sexual energy and orgasm can be vehicles for expanded awareness, but warns that without grounding, premature spiritual experiences may cause confusion or overwhelm. True integration involves resting in expanded states rather than perpetually chasing highs and learning to embody awakened presence within daily life. Jaiya invites listeners to consider what they are integrating their experiences into, encouraging alignment with unconditional self-love and wholeness. This mature approach transforms sexuality from a fleeting pleasure or escape into a profound practice of remembering and embodying the fullness of self and universal love.